Thank you, Apu.
Thank you, Apu. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order. This meeting is being held in accordance with public laws of 1975, Chapter 231. An adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by notice sent to the Star Ledger, the local source, and posted in the main lobby of the municipal building and on the Township website. I now would like to ask David Penna of American Legion 228 to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I also respectfully ask for a moment of silence for all those who serve our country, both near and not so near. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mayor Capides.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Weber.
Here.
Committeewoman DuBois.
Here.
Committeeman Huber.
Here.
Committeeman Kaiser.
Present.
Thank you. We have several proclamations and announcements this evening. Tomorrow is Veterans Day, November 11th. We will be having a ceremony tomorrow at 11 o'clock. We are not quite sure yet if it's going to be at Veterans Park or it will be at Chisholm. We're asking if you're attending, please adhere to the governor's guidelines and wear a mask and practice social distancing. If we are indoors, it's going to be a 25-person maximum, and we kindly ask you to respect that. And all municipal offices are going to be closed tomorrow. Recreation Department and Senior Citizens Club, the tree lighting and musical tribute to the season will be Wednesday, December 2nd, between 7 and 8 o'clock. The rain or snow date is Thursday, December 3rd. Please, again, we kindly ask that you follow COVID-19 protocols. The Union County Mobile Test Unit will be visiting the Springfield Community Pool at 44 Morrison Road, Thursday, November 12th, from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. to offer free COVID-19 walk-up tests. No appointment is required. Registration is done on site with mobile phone or tablet. Masks are required. No food, no drink, no smoking, no chewing gum 30 minutes prior, and your results are under 72 hours. For additional details, you can visit ucnj.org/walkup. County residents can visit any walk-up test site. There's also going to be a walk-up site in Cranford, Tuesday, November 17th, at the Orange Avenue Pool parking lot located at 1025 Orange Avenue from 10 to 1. And again, that's on Tuesday, November 17th. I wanted to say that a few days ago, I was honored to attend and also give a proclamation in keeping with our inclusive community. We had a Diwali celebration in front of Town Hall. I would like to thank Adam Lieb and his staff for coordinating that wonderful event in conjunction with the Springfield Unity Project. It was very well attended. We had the support of the auxiliary police and several other resources for the town. We also had a lot of local vendors, including Halo Roasters. We had backyard fireworks. We had a couple other people there. Forgive me if I don't remember. There was a lot of people, but there was, dance lessons, art. They were selling some things, and it was just a wonderful, wonderful, welcoming community event, and we appreciate all the efforts. Does anyone have any announcements on the dais that they would like to share at this time? Anyone from the Township Committee? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to move on. And with everyone,
I got one.
Sure.
Congratulations. I'm very happy to be working with you again.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Weber. I appreciate it. Moving on, we have public comment on agenda items only coming up, but if it's okay with everybody, I'd like to do something a little bit different. As we promised, we have two individuals, Carol Bianchi and Jackie Espinoza, who are here from JCP&L. to give us some additional information about some process and procedure, some things that we do, that they do, their company does, and of course, some debriefing from the storm that we had at the end of the summer. What I will do at the end of their presentation is I will open up the comments to the public, and we'll certainly restrict it just to JCP&L to begin, so we can close that portion out, and then I will open it up to other agenda items. Before I turn it over to Carol and Jackie, I would like to say, and for everyone's benefit, that they volunteered to be here and give them their time to come and keep the residents informed and ask questions that our as a committee have and you as the public have. We maintain a very good relationship with them. We have, during the storm, we were in contact every day. We shared as much information as we could. Some of the information was positive. Some of the information was not what we wanted to hear, but we always prided ourselves on open communication, honest communication. They're here tonight to keep us informed about what's going on, what they learned, what they saw, improvements that they made. And I just want everybody to understand that Ms. Espinoza and Ms. Bianchi are not personally responsible for the incidents that we might have, encountered. They're here to, again, inform us, to answer questions best that they can, and that really to shed some light on some things and keep our residents informed and have some answers to some questions that you perhaps have for quite some time. So with that, I want to turn it over to Jackie and Carol for a brief presentation, after which I'll open it up to the Township Committee for some follow-up questions, and then I will certainly open it up to our residents. So Ms. Bianchi, Ms. Espinoza, by all means, please.
Okay, good evening, Mayor and everyone. I just want to make sure, first of all, that you can see and hear me.
Yes, we can.
Okay, very good. So what we're going to do tonight, first I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Carol Bianchi. I am an External Affairs liaison for JCP&L and represent Springfield. And I have with me today my colleague Jackie Espinoza. You can see her on my screen. It's the lower left corner. And Jackie is an experienced external affairs representative. She's been with JCP&L for 24 years and in the role of external affairs for 10 years. And during that time, she has been through many storms. When we have a storm that just hits one part of our territory, the external affairs works together and we're able to work really very efficiently covering that territory. In hurricane or tropical storm Isaias, it hit our entire territory. So we were really, each external affairs covered their own territory, but we're all a team. And when Jackie was freed up, she was the first one to call me and say, what can I do to help you? And I had other colleagues who called and helped me as well. So I'm appreciative of that. What is the role of the external affairs person? I know that your administrator, John, and your mayor, and some of you are very familiar with it. It's not just storm duty. We work together throughout the year. I'm very involved with your development projects. As is my team at JCP&L, my crews. We are there to make sure things go as smoothly as possible to keep projects moving along. We've spent a lot of time, unfortunately, lately at Morris Avenue and Caldwell. We've had some issues there, but as I mentioned, we are, we strive to be partners. We strive to make things go well for Springfield. And so we are there for you, whether it's 11:30 at night, whether it's working around the clock as our crews did on, I think it was Monday, to secure the scene and get things back in order. That's what we strive to do. So with that said, what I'd like to do is share, I put together a PowerPoint presentation. It is probably 10 minutes or less. And I think what it will do is give the residents and those of you who aren't familiar with the details of the storm, a really good overview. What we'll talk about is generally what was going on in our entire territory, but also hone in on what was happening in Springfield. And then of course, there'll be ample time for your questions, which is the most important part of the presentation. What I'll be doing is concluding the presentation with some after action items. We received a tremendous amount of feedback. We solicited it through our surveys. We had an OEM county meeting where your mayor and officials joined, the OEM joined. We took all that feedback and we've been having what we call a hot wash. And we do have a number of items that we're going to be working on, and I'll address that at the end of the presentation. So with that, I'm going to attempt to share my screen, and Apu, if it doesn't go well, I hope you can help me. Okay, let's see. This is what I want. And take it from the beginning. Can you see the slide?
We can.
Yes, we
Okay,
can.
very good. Very good. All right, so we're off to a good start. So the first thing that I'd like to do is just share with you resources. These are the resources that we have available for all of our customers. I think most of you are familiar with the 888 lights, especially during the storm. But we also have a service number. That 800-662-3115 is for any other type of service that you may need. If you don't like to be on the phone and you prefer, you can always go online, and there's a form there. You can submit any request for any type of service. You can also help your municipality by reporting limbs on wires, any kind of hazardous conditions. You can report those directly. There's a feature for hearing or speech impairments. And then finally, you can give a survey to let us know, were you hanging on the line too long? Was the questions too long? We will take that feedback. And now just to launch into the storm. And I know the mayor and John and some others have heard this before, but for the benefit of all of you, Tropical Storm Isaias was the second worst impacts in our territory since Hurricane Sandy. We had wind gusts of over 65 miles per hour when it hit, and in some areas, rainfall of 4 to 7 inches. At JCP&L, we serve 1.1 million customers, and 800,000 of our customers were impacted and out of power. Yeah, as you can see, there's some statistics on the screen, but for the benefit of those who are calling in, I will read those statistics for your benefit. We had approximately 161 transmission or sub-transmission line trips, and a majority of these were tree related. Many of them were trees that were off the right of way. Approximately 400,000 distribution circuits were locked out. And what that means is that the entire circuit was impacted because there was so much damage on the circuit. Those lockouts comprised about 25% of our total circuits. Again, a little bit more stats, and this is for our whole territory, and then we'll zoom in on literally on Springfield and what was going on. But over 2,800 cross arms had to be replaced, over 730 poles, 660 transformers, and 82 miles of wire and cable had to be replaced. We had over 700 road closures, 12,000 hazard reports, and 8,800 locations of tree damage. 2,800 critical facilities impacted, and 39 circuits quarantined. And I'd like to explain, if you'd give me a second, what quarantine means. When there's significant damage to a circuit, the step usually requires a quarantine process in which an entire circuit is electrically isolated, and we start from the beginning to the end to make repairs because there's so much damage. It is a safer and more efficient process, and what we're literally trying to do is prevent anyone working further down the line from getting harmed. The company determined that 39 circuits would benefit from the quarantine process after the storm. And this is what the equivalent of 82 miles looks like. You could travel from Toms River to Morristown, just to give you a picture of the number of miles of wire alone that we needed to replace. And I think what's even more interesting to you in Springfield is what was going on in your town. We serve 7,392 customers in Springfield. And of that number, 6,150,000 customers were out of power. That's 83% of your town had no power. We had 99 spans of wire down in Springfield alone. Extensive tree damage, which many of you have seen, 8 hazard orders, and 64 separate outage orders. And that doesn't mean 64 individual orders. That means orders impacting the total of 6,000 customers. In Springfield alone, we had 4 quarantine circuits, and we needed to replace 4 poles. Here's a picture showing you what our hazards looked like. And if you look on the right of the screen, outlined in white, that's JCP&L territory. The swath down the middle is PSE&G territory. And the red dots represent all of the hazard orders that we had during the storm. And as you can see on the left side, we started out with 8,000 and we chipped away at them until everyone was restored. You'd see spikes at times when more hazards were reported, depending on what was going on. But we worked until we restored every single one. And this sort of correlates with the tree density in New Jersey. If you look on the right side, again, in the blue, that's our JCP&L territory. If you look on the left side, all of those dark dots represent trees. If you look down the middle again, that's PSE&G, not as much tree density right here. So when they talk about not being able to compare apples to oranges, the BPU will say that because the geography is so very different. And that's just one factor that's considered in reviewing our restoration process and how we did. How does the storm start? It starts with the meteorologist tracking storms, and we receive numerous updates about the path of the storm. Our president, Jim Fagel, immediately coordinated with our regional mutual assistance groups and mobilized 1,800 additional personnel ahead of the storm. After the storm passes through, additional assistance was secured from contractors, all 9 of our affiliated utilities, and through that regional mutual assistance group. Thousands of utility workers were part of the storm restoration effort, including our normal crews. It's also notable that crews cannot be released from their own state until they're sure that they are out of harm's way. So there's a little bit of a waiting period for those additional crews to come from other states to make sure that they're needed. Similarly, we have a local utility that assists us, but they first have to make sure their own municipality is cleaned up. Here's the restoration process. Again, don't mean to bore the mayor and others who have seen this, but for the benefit of all of you, this is basically how the process works. We start at the very top with the power plant because we have to make sure that everything is okay from the very top to the bottom. Damage assessment takes 24 to 48 hours. We're not just doing damage assessment, we're also addressing those life and limb emergencies and those critical facilities and trying to pick up customers along the way. But it does take 24 to 48 hours to assess the entire damage on a circuit. We need to make sure that before we go make repairs, we have all the materials we need, we have the right crews. There's numerous crews that might be involved on one circuit, forestry, hazard, etc. So just to give you an idea, that's why the damage assessment is so important. We repair the high voltage lines and restore essential functions. And then of course, priority is given to our hospitals, our critical facilities, and roadways. Now, when I talk about roadways, what is given priority is the major roads, the states, the county roads before we get to the local roads. And so this is a balancing act once we get past the most critical roads. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. We then repair the main feeder and distribution lines before we can actually get to restoring customers. And we're restoring the largest number of customers on a circuit than the individual homes. So if you live in a low dense area, you're likely to be the last to be restored, unfortunately. But it seems to be the fairest process that we try to follow. So we'll be revisiting that. And here's a comparison of our restoration effort. We compared it to the last major storms, Hurricane Sandy being the worst by far. But Irene and Riley Quinn, we had more damage than Irene and Riley Quinn. And as you can see, we restored all of our customers within 5 to 6 days, whereas in these prior storms, it took 10 to 11 days for restoration. So we do continue to make more improvements as we with each storm, fortunately. This is what restoration looked like in Springfield. You had 6,153 customers out of power on August 4th. We made some progress. As I said, we were focused on those critical facilities. But by the second day, August 6th, we restored 43% of the customers in Springfield, 60% by August 7, 80% by August 8, and by August 9, we had 99% of our customers restored in Springfield. But we don't stop there. We work until everyone's restored. And usually those last customers will have individual issues for which they may need to hire an electrician. There is certain equipment that they own, but we will continue to work with the customers to make sure that we coordinate with your electrician and get you back as quickly as possible. I wanted to include these slides just to let you all know, in case you're not aware, that we do perform routine inspections and maintenance on all of our circuits. Every circuit is inspected on a 5-year cycle. We identify what is wrong on the circuit and we repair it. That's not to say that we're not working all year long, identifying particularly where we have outages. We have reliability engineers who are recording those outages, what the causes are. We're patrolling the lines and we're trying to address what is going wrong, particularly if you have a number of outages on a circuit. Wood pole inspections, they're done every 10 years and we either fortify or replace the poles. Infrared scan or thermography, this is done every 4 years. And we use these, you can see the picture in the lower right side. That is an infrared camera that detects any issues that are not visible to the naked eye. Vegetative management is a very important part of our reliability program. As we mentioned, this storm was a tree storm. And we do a 4-year vegetative management on all of our circuits. We address hazard trees. We've been particularly focused on the emerald ash borer. And again, these are the trees in our right of way. In addition to our vegetative management program, we have done an IIP, which is enhanced vegetative management. We've invested an additional $97 million into doing additional tree work. And then there's the worst performing circuit program, where we address any circuit that is not performing up to the standards that are set by the BPU and JCP&L. We need to identify why that is happening and what we need to do about it. And we need to focus and pick a particular measure that will address what those issues are on that circuit. Okay, and now just to let you know, this is what your schedule looks like. So there's actually a schedule. And I asked our reliability engineer to pull it for me just so that you can see. So there was some work going on in the Waverly substation this year, and there'll be more work going on next year, but we track it. We have a schedule. After action review is the most important. The lessons that we've learned from this storm and others, we are evaluating our critical facility road opening processes. As we mentioned, it's kind of a hybrid approach. We have a process, but we know that there were some issues with local road openings, and we're working to make sure that we have the proper balance. And particularly important is those estimated times of restoration. We are required to put out a global ETR within 24 to 48 hours after a storm leaves our territory. And what happens when we issued that global ETR, I think it was August 11, and that global ETR means that's when we determine we will be have everyone restored. But what our customers really want are better ETRs. They want to know, when is my neighborhood going to be back in power so that I can plan accordingly. And we are working hard to make sure that that happens. We are reviewing and revising our processes so that we can provide those more granular ETRs to you during the storm and as early as possible. Right now, the way it has worked with our processes, we cannot establish a better ETR until we've assigned a crew to that particular circuit. We're also working with our municipalities and county to review and refine the reporting prioritization process. And the way this is supposed to work, which is through your county OEM, so Union County is wonderful to work with. There was quite a volume, as you saw, of damage and hazard reports, et cetera. But we need to have a regional approach that works for everyone, because we can't be prioritizing one municipality over another. We're trying to take that regional approach. So what happens is the local OEMs are supposed to report their priorities to the county. The county then takes the priorities overall, channels them to, we have a representative who's usually sitting right in the county OEM. During this storm, he worked remotely because of COVID, but he was still in constant communication with the OEM at the county. And we're working those hazards and those critical facilities through our priority restoration unit until every single one is restored. So that is basically the conclusion of my presentation. I have a lot more information, but I think it's really important to give you all an opportunity to ask your questions. And I'd also first like to ask my colleague, Jackie, who's been generous to give her time and join me tonight. So I'll stop sharing my screen and I'll ask Jackie if she'd like to add anything that I've forgotten.
All right, you did a great job, Carol. Very thorough, and I'm sure they all appreciate that as well. One thing and you did touch on this, is about the ETRs and the information. And through the after action items, we realized that, what we want to get better at is providing better information to the end user, to the customer. They have all that information. It will lighten the load with them, mayor, and the council for information. So that is something that we really want to work on and improve, because we've heard from many of the mayors, and I'm sure it was very stressful you're getting a lot of calls, especially with social media. Everyone's quick to look for answers on Facebook as well. So that is definitely something I'm sure Carol will touch on a little bit, but that's a result of the after action items and all of your feedback. So we certainly appreciate that. The Reliability Plus program, I know you talked about that. That was $97 million that was invested in the distribution system. So that is not the transmission lines, but the lines that you see out on the roadway all the way down to your home. So work at the substations. We put new technology on the system, these trip savers, more SCADA controls. So that's remote control from our control center. A lot of good stuff, a lot happening on the distribution system. So all good things. Let's just open up to you guys. I'm sure you do have some questions. Fantastic job, Carol.
And yes, and I want to say too, it is a fantastic job. It was a very, very informative presentation. There was a lot of good slides that were there, especially for me, and I guess perhaps the rest of the Township Committee. Even though we talked so many times about so many things, there was some extra information there that I wasn't aware, particularly that restoration slide of the day to day about, when the restoration went up. That was a very informative slide, and it really gives a little snapshot of the work and the progress that was made. Many times people are left in the dark, no pun intended, and that kind of shed some light on how fast you were working to get everybody back up. And I have a question before I open up to the Township Committee and then our residents. Jackie, you had kind of wanted to piggyback off one of your last comments. I think when you talk about social media and you talk about residents and buzzes and all the scuttlebutt that's out there, I think one of the biggest problems for us as a township, and maybe perhaps for you from a PR standpoint, and as you're familiar, there was for more than several days, there seemed to be a poll that was in midair. It was all over Facebook. I think one of our local papers, or maybe a second one, picked up on it as a news story. Can you talk about that scenario specifically, about perhaps what we learned from that, or what went right or what went wrong, and how situations like that is going to be handled in the future?
Absolutely, I can, Mayor. Thank you. So yes, and I think I'd like to just start off by saying there is no perfect storm response. And this is one example of that. In all sincerity, that we did a lot right, and there were things that we wish maybe we could have done better. And that was one of them. And as you know, it was important enough to me that I went out to that location because it really was a concern. But at the same time, I think what had happened in that scenario was, I think you saw the number of road closures that we had and hazards and critical facilities. So we didn't get to that as quickly as we could have. And I think it was alarming for those residents. And that is something that we aren't proud of. So we are taking that feedback. And as you saw in this, the feedback, that was a big part of it. And that is something that we need to work on, because while there's a lot of pressure to restore customers along the way while we're opening up roads, but even though maybe that particular area was not going to restore a lot of customers, that was really important to the community and to those folks who really had no ingress or egress off of their street. There were a lot of trees down, there were a lot of poles down, there was a lot of work to be done, but it's something that we're definitely taking very seriously and saying, look, we need to maybe do better in that particular a situation of that type. Not every local road closure is the same. We need to look at what's happening in that particular road. So that is one of the lessons that we learned from that. And Mayor, I do think that is exactly what you're talking about, correct?
Yes, and I appreciate your candor and your candidness. And if I neglected to say it in the beginning, because you've done so much work in terms of with us that the public did not get to see. You were on all the calls with us, all the group calls. If I neglected to mention this in the beginning, I apologize. But you were actually out there walking with our crews. You were walking with our DPW supervisor. You spent, I think multiple days with our deputy mayor, Chris Weber, walking around and talking to residents and seeing what you could do firsthand. And for those particular residents in those hard hit areas, as you just alluded to, I think that went a long way with the residents. I mean, of course, no one was happy with the situation, but I think it just spoke to, your willingness to go out there and see firsthand what was happening. And we do appreciate that. At this time, go ahead.
Mayor, just one more thing about that
Sure.
situation on a bright note. Now, I'm not saying that this will definitely be a panacea, but that particular circuit that feeds that street, we're doing that important tie point that I've been talking to you about between the Waverly and Fathom Road. Is it Fathom Road or Fathom Road?
People say it both ways. It's fine.
Okay, so I'm safe. We are going to have a tie point created, which is going to allow us to restore customers more quickly when there's an outage on those circuits. Those two particular circuits serve the bulk of your residents.
Mhm.
And so that is why that was identified for a reliability project. It's a multi-million-dollar project. It's going to allow us to switch between those circuits. So that's a really important investment. Now, would it have addressed the issue that we had at the storm? Perhaps we could have restored the customers, but in terms of opening up that road, that's something separate that we're addressing. So I just wanted to mention that.
I appreciate it. At this time, I'd like to open it up to the Township Committee. Anyone have any questions for either Jackie or Carol?
I have a few.
Sure.
Okay. Sorry that you guys can't see me. Ironically, I'm in the dark, but I'm sitting in my car. It's just not bright. This is not like, an act for this presentation by any means. Not by choice. But I have kids have to be somewhere quiet. So I'm going to ask about that poll situation, which the mayor already asked about, because that was hanging in the air for 4 days, and to the residents and to people who are not in your industry, it seemed like an incredibly dangerous issue that took a long time to get resolved, and people would like, you spoke on it already, but that was one of my first questions. Secondly, I remember the last extended outage we had, which was like, Linda, that was when we were at Chisholm, when we had the heating at Chisholm, I think. Was that like March of a couple years ago? Like 2 years ago?
March 2000.
And
Yes, it
yeah,
was.
when we were, okay, so during that time, I was deputy mayor, and I was in a lot of the meetings in regards to what was going on with the power outages. And I remember one of the things that our business administrator and I at the time spoke to one of the governor's people about, actually, was when you're restoring power, one of the things that was delaying the restoration was when your crews went to the polls, and I'm speaking as a person who has no experience in this, so forgive me if I stay on, but when you guys get to the polls, sometimes they're your polls, sometimes they're Verizon or they're whoever, and you had to wait to get like permission from Verizon or get something signed off on. And the governor mentioned at that time, or his representative said they were going to change that, where whoever got there could just immediately start the work. Is that something that has changed? Has that sped up the work at all?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, and I just unmuted myself. So
Okay.
to address that specifically, we always work and coordinate with Verizon. I was not here back in March, Jackie was, but during the storm, we are relying on Verizon to replace their poles. We're replacing ours because of the volume that we have, but we are coordinating. I can't speak to this specifically during this storm, whether there were any issues with that, with coordinating with
Okay.
Verizon. My colleague in external affairs at at Verizon, I have known him a long time, and we always talk to each other. So most recently, I guess it was a week ago when the pole fell on Caldwell, we were on the phone with each other late at night coordinating. He's been in contact with me. Carol, when are your crews going to be able to do that? We had both trucks there holding the pole up. Again, it was a pole that fell. It was a Verizon pole, but JC Pinnell was working along side by side all through the night. I was there at 11:30 at night. Your mayor and administrator were there, your chief. I could go on and on about how we coordinate, but in terms of who replaces whose poles, we do have a system to work together. We certainly don't want to get hung up on a technicality as to whose pole it is, but I think that I can't really say that that was an issue that came to my attention during this storm, that there was a
Okay.
holdup because it was
Yeah.
one person's pole versus another. So I think that we have really good communication and coordination with Verizon. I think that's the takeaway.
Okay, thank you on that. And I had two more questions. The ice and water, when we had an extended, obviously the one we're talking about, the extended outage, and we get those emails in regards to ice and water, but it seemed as if we got those emails, people went to where we told them to go, and those locations were unaware of the ice and water preparations, or they didn't have it, they didn't know they were supposed to be doing it. Has anything changed in that communication or plans for that? So in the future, it works a little more smoothly. I mean, I know you probably have a million things going on at the time, but it's something sometimes people do need, and it didn't go well during the last storm, I remember.
Right. So we're really aware of that, and that's part of our after action review. What happens, the way the program works is we don't supply the ice and water, but we reimburse the stores, and we have plans in place with them ahead of time. So whether or not a particular store was prepared or ran out, we are addressing that. And, that is definitely part of our after action review, because we know that stores ran out and, customers would go and they didn't have any more. Jackie, I don't know if you have anything to add to that with regard to the ice and water. Jackie Espinosa?
I know that group, yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I know that the ice and water group is definitely having their after action, and I think they're going to expand on the stores, and I'm not part of that group there, but I know it definitely was an after action item, Councilman, and they are addressing
And I think
some of the locations.
Also, the vouchers, it was like a one-time $5 voucher. When people are out of power for like a week, okay, I got 2 gallons of water and a bag of ice, and I have no power for a week. I don't know what can be done about that, but I know that's something that people. I mean, I was without power an extended time too. So when I say people, I'm people. We're all people. A lot of us went through it. But I know that was a concern of a lot of residents. So if they're discussing those things, that might be something they also talk about in those conversations.
I'll definitely take that back.
And I had one more question. Thank you. And I have one more question. The area, I've heard the area down by Avenue, and I don't know what substation.
I think we lost Committeewoman Du Bois.
Yeah, I'm not hearing anything.
Are you there? All right. I don't know, Erica. We kind of lost you. We'll come back to you on that point. Does anyone else on the Township Committee, before I open this up to the public, wish to speak? Alex, Committeeman Kaiser?
Hey, no, hey, thank you, Carol and Jackie, of course, for coming here tonight. Just one point to bring up on the ice and water, and not to kill the point, but I was not elected during Hurricane Sandy, but it was my understanding in talking with other elected officials throughout the state who were that the program was actually run by you guys and not directed to an individual store. You set up ice trucks in certain locations, and it was unlimited. And now, of course, that was during the summer, I believe, right? It was a heat wave, so a little different, but this was during a pandemic. So, I mean, I think you're, comparable in the issues we face. But just to bring that back, if it is true that your company decided to switch around how it does it, that seemed to be a fail on you guys, and I hope that you'll correct that and bring that back and get us back an answer of how you used to do it and how you're going to correct it in the future. Because doing the debrief is great, but if we don't hear the actual results of what you're fixing in the end, then it does us no good. So I hope that will come back and get reported back to us. 2 other points just that I had. I think I'm the only one on this committee that actually had, just by virtue of his position, to be on both your guys' daily call briefings and PSE&G's daily call briefings. And I'm sure if you talk to the mayors of PSE&G run towns, they're not singing their praises any higher than we're singing your company's praises. It was equally frustrating for them. But the one thing that I think actually ran well and kind of the constructive is your daily briefings for elected officials and such, and county OEMs and OEMs at the thing, was to have like kind of a global call where you guys, your bosses kind of gave a briefing and then opened it up for 1, 2, 3 questions before saying, hey, at the end of it, guys, we got to get back to work. Thanks. We'll be back tomorrow to take a couple more questions. That didn't help anybody. But what PSE&G that I found actually did well was they didn't do a global call for everybody, but they did kind of regional calls. And it allowed for feedback between not only town officials to one another, but to the individuals in your position. And kind of went through, it was maybe 10 towns, and kind of went alphabetically and said, hey, Springfield, what are issues you're facing? This is the numbers that we're facing. We're seeing issue on Mountain Ave. We're seeing an issue on Morris Ave. We're seeing an issue on Shumpike. That's what we have in our system. Do you guys have any other issues that we're not aware of? And kind of talk through it. I felt that was, and kind of gave ETAs at the point where they didn't have an ETA and said, hey, we're going to get back to you offline. We'll revisit this tomorrow. So it was certainly handled much differently. And hey, that's a suggestion. Maybe you guys communicate, right? You talk about how you communicate with all companies. Maybe you should talk to PSE&G and kind of take their method for handling it, because let me tell you, those global calls were pointless. And that's being generous to you guys. Absolutely pointless and embarrassing, because the first call, you guys cut off after 2 questions. And I'm sorry, and that's not on you guys, but that's something to bring back to your bosses that I'm frustrated about. And lastly, one other thing, hey, I'll take this more global. You know, the country what we're seeing here as a world is significant climate change. And this is causing these storms to be more intense, the frequency to increase. I think today we just saw that in the Gulf, it was the 29th hurricane in one season. That hasn't happened in a history of our world. These storms are going to get worse. They're going to intensify, and the frequency is going to increase. So I think it's an honest question. As the storms are coming up stronger to our area, what's our infrastructure like? If I'm not mistaken, I think poles, right? The wooden poles, they have different level or rating level. A place like Florida, right, might have the strongest wooden pole because, hey, they get hit with hurricanes every single, season, category 5s possibly. New Jersey probably had the weaker side of those poles because, hey, when we decided to implement that, New Jersey wasn't getting hit with possibly category 1 hurricanes. And this wasn't even a category 1. I think it was 4 miles per hour less than what would be a category 1, and it still caused damage. So the question, and I don't expect you guys to have an answer now, but what is your company thinking of? Is it going to start, hey, it's great that you're doing reviews every 5 years, but how about, are you going to strengthen the polls? Or are you guys having internal reviews where you're saying, hey, the infrastructure needs to meet what the future is going to be? And the future is going to be quite devastating because, hey, 5 days out now, what happens in 5 more years? Is those 10 days when you have even more polls down? That's something that you guys got to think about and report back, because in all honesty, that's what the people want to hear. What are you doing? Hey, it's great that you're doing reviews every 5 years, but you guys got to improve the infrastructure just generally, but you really have to come up with a plan with how we're going to combat the new climate that we're facing here. And are you doing the tree maintenance? Is it up to par? Because I've heard from a number of elected officials that said in previous years, in previous budgets, your company spent more on tree trimming than you are right now as a company. So, and I don't have, I won't say that I know for certain, but that was brought up by a number of elected officials across the country. And that's not for this council to investigate. You guys are gonna get hit by BPU, I'm sure, and possibly the state legislature who's gonna investigate you on that. But those are all points that you really guys gotta hammer out and bring to us and tell us what's your plan. Are you gonna spend
Alex, you
money?
definitely bring up some good points, and I want to talk about the calls because we've heard that from other township officials as well. And we are going to a more regional approach. So I'll be on a call with my general manager and it will cover like Sussex, part of Morris County, and a little bit of Warren County. So this way, typically the storms are affecting those different areas. And then Carol will be holding a call with her general manager. So definitely be more localized. So we heard you guys on that one. We're already implementing that. Now with these storms, I cover up in Sussex County and Warren County. So I get hit with numerous storms throughout the year because of the geography of where we are and
100%.
trees.
You're totally different than a place like Newark versus you. You know, there's
Exactly.
no doubt.
So what we've had a lot of meetings after storms with the county, with the senator, and just like with this storm, like the Riley Quinn storms, the cause, like the poles aren't just come down and breaking. Yeah, maybe once in a while it does, but it's the trees that are taking down the equipment, and 70 to 80%, and they mark everything if it's trees out of the right of way. So we're working with our county, like Sussex County, they know ash trees, it hasn't been, you know, everyone knows the ash trees, there's a problem. So they've increased their budget on ash trees. I know a lot of the towns that I work with, their land use boards, if somebody's going to build, if they're going to plant trees, do not plant it under the power line. Make sure it's a tree that we say, hey, that's okay around the power line. It's only going to get up to so many feet. So we like to partner with the towns as well. And I think I know my area's been hit so much that they really have that into, you know, they talk about it all the time. I just got a call the other day. A resident couldn't put trees until we were like, yes, the land use board will not approve this until they talk to JCP&L. Just to make sure they're not going to put a pine tree or something that doesn't have a deep rooting system right next to the power lines. And then it's an issue maybe 10 years down the road. So we are partnering. We are increasing the vegetation management budget, but people love their trees as well. And it's sort of a balance. There's beautiful trees that are coming down that are right in the lawns of these homes. And it's outside of our right of way. So we can only go in our lane. We can only trim what we can trim, but we are partnering with other, I know there's, I'm sure your county is doing the same thing, your town, I'm sure you increased your budget for vegetation management, targeting the ash trees that are on the town properties.
Yeah, and to your point, we've had our pushback.
So
Yeah.
I want to piggyback on what Jackie's saying, because there's a lot of good stuff here, a lot of good stuff. One of the things I want to talk about is when we went for the IIP program. So I think everyone understands generally the framework. We're regulated by the Board of Public Utilities. So everything that we do has to be approved by the Board of Public Utilities. And there's a good story here, however. We did go to the Board of Public Utilities for a $400 million investment in infrastructure. So the Board of Public Utilities has to balance what the customer rate advocate is saying and what JCP&L is saying, what our needs are. And so we negotiated for $97 million, a fraction of what we wanted to invest, which required us to cut back. So of that 97 million, we invested $45 million into our additional tree work. Just to give you an idea, again, I like to be specific. In Springfield alone, we did an additional 10 miles of tree management in 2019, 2020 over our 4-year cycle. And I didn't want to give you the impression that we're only checking our equipment every 4 or 5 years. Absolutely not true. We are constantly, as I said, we have our reliability engineers constantly looking at the circuits. After the storm, we do complete sweeps of all the circuits to make sure that the system's fortified and that it's safe. We respond if there's escalated issues, if there's a lot of outages on a circuit, we're responding throughout the year. And again, if you want me to just take a little bit more time on this question, because I think it's a good one, committeeman, we've also invested, in addition to our regular work that we do on our circuits, we've installed SCADA controls. Those are supervisory control and data acquisition. That helps us to supervise and control our substations remotely. And we've installed 2 new ones in Springfield under this IIP program. That allows us to also open and close the breakers remotely. As I mentioned, we installed 5 trip savers. Those trip savers reduce the duration of outages. So let's say that a tree limb falls on a branch and opens up the circuit. Instead of waiting for a bucket truck to come, a crew to come to close that breaker, we're able to, that trip saver will automatically reclose the breaker 3 times. And then of course, if it's a bigger issue, a crew will have to come. So these are just some of the things that we're doing, but I just wanted to address your issue that, oh, and smart meters. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention smart meters. There was a moratorium by the BPU. We could not implement smart meters sooner, but that moratorium was lifted this year, and we filed our plan. I think it was August 27. So we have a plan for those smart meters. Now, what are those smart meters going to do? They're going to give us a lot of information that will enable us to know automatically when someone's out of power, gives us information, data about what the problem is, whether someone's restored. So a lot of those communication problems that we were experiencing during the storm are going to go away with the smart meters. It's going to take some time to implement. The plan has to be approved by the BPU, but it's on its way. So there's a lot of good things happening. We're also investing more in our transmission system, and the BPU is approving a greater investment in our vegetative management in 2021. Along with that, there's going to be technology to better assess and address the tree growth over the 4-year cycle. Those are just some things I wanted to share with you.
All right. At this point, I appreciate it, but at this point, I know we have 4 residents that have specific questions. There's also some Q&A about other questions that doesn't seem to be wanting to ask live. So I've asked them to give me their email address, and I'm going to forward them on to Carol, and so that she might be reaching out to them, because again, another thing that Carol and Jackie have done, they have reached out to residents specifically, called, emailed for residents with specific problems and concerns. I know Committeewoman Du Bois has another question, and then there's about 4 residents that have questions that they would like to ask live. And I also want to get to Deputy Mayor Weber and Committeeman Huber if they have any questions before we go to the public. So Erica, if you want to just ask your last question there.
Yeah, sorry I got cut off before. The last question I had was, I heard from a lot of residents that lived on the side of town by Hillside and Mountain in that area, that in their perspective, and I don't live on that side of town, so I can only speak on what they're asking me, not that I knew the answer. Every time we have an extended power outage, they're always the last ones to be restored. I don't know that to be true or not. Is there any type of pattern to restorations when extensive power outages go on in town? Is there a reason why one area might go back up later than the rest, or is that just what, is that what they feel, but it may not be happening? I don't know if that's something you could answer, but I know it's been brought to my attention a bunch of times, so I just figured I'd ask since I have you here. And thank you for your answers on the other ones too before I got cut off.
So I'll try to tackle this one first, Jackie, but in terms of the time for restoration, it really depends on what the cause of the outage is and whether we have the ability to switch customers to another circuit. That is why that tie point is important for customers served on the Waverly sub. I can't say offhand what Hillside Mountain customers, what circuits they're served on, but when you have that ability for switching, you will see shorter outages. Those trip savers also will reduce the duration of outages depending on what the cause of the outage is. So no, it's not as if we, I don't have an explanation for you right now as to why they feel or they are experiencing longer outages. But I can tell you that with the tie point, which I believe serves Hillside, because I looked at the map, that is going to give the ability to switch and backfeed from the Fathom Road sub, and that'll reduce the duration of an outage. So I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Jackie.
Sure. If you recall the map, the general grid map that Carol showed, and it had numbers on it, we focus on the transmission, the substation. It truly comes down to the size of the outage. So if it's a small neighborhood, maybe there's, like on my street, if I have 4 or 5 customers are out, and then we have an outage that's affecting 200 customers, we are going towards the outage that is affecting more customers. So it's sort of like, it all depends on the type of outage, what their situation is. If it's just, a single phase wire going down the street as opposed to, a 3-phase wire going down the street. Now, I will bring this up though, it's a good point. I'm glad you brought this up. if it's a multi-day storm and we have, say it was a group of maybe 10 customers, and now it's day 3 and a new outage comes in and it's affecting, 300 people. However, the smaller one's been out longer. There's a time with the shift in the storm where we start looking at duration. So it wouldn't matter if it was just affecting 10. They're going to start looking at, how long were these people out? Maybe the larger one they've just been out maybe 2 hours. The other person was out 2 days, so they will do the switch. So I'm glad that you brought that up so I can explain that we do look at that as well. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Chris or Rich, do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions. I just have just a few statements. Agree with Alex and you on the calls. That daily call was useless and insulting. Boy, oh
Agreed.
boy,
I was on that first one.
the most frustrating experience ever to sit there and have a guy just shut a meeting down after 2 calls because he didn't like the heat he was getting. Unacceptable. Another thing, the hanging pole, something like that can't happen again. And something like that could have been probably taken care of within the first day if the calls weren't as horrible as they were. And we were able to communicate with them and get our point across with that. On the other side of things, I was out from morning till night. The crews were good. I don't know if people understand fully the extensive amount of damage. For example, my block had no damage. And if you drove around a few blocks in my area, you would think that everything was okay. But you went to some places like, Salter and Lyons and things like that, and you just saw poles just split in half like toothpicks. So as, somebody who was worked during Sandy and now, took a different side of things during this one, I actually think you guys did a decent job in restoring things quickly. I think it could have been a lot worse and it could have dragged out a lot longer. And I think with some fine tuning, I think that, and some more infrastructure improvements, we can be okay. So overall, though, I think you guys actually did a pretty decent job. So.
And real quick, Chris, thank you so much, because the guys are working so hard. And we do have women line workers as well. So the utility workers are working extremely hard. And the weather conditions, I'm not sure if you knew that there was several hours on the first day of the storm on August 4th. They could not go up in the buckets any longer. And it was a safety hazard. So we had to stand in that. So they're out in this weather. So it was very dangerous. The winds were so high. So for the safety, we stand down all the workers.
Yeah, there were some times I was with them.
Thank you for that, Chris.
Yeah, there were some times I was with them and lightning was there and they had to stop work. So nothing went on your side. We completely get that, but we just need some fine tuning.
Yeah, and your comments are noted and they're being heard really loud and clear, Deputy.
Thank you.
I just have a couple statements. My first term on Township Committee, Scott was there when it seemed they took forever to repair. They've improved their timing a lot. I know a lot of people in Springfield might not agree with me, but I think it was almost 2 weeks that time. And you say we had 2 weeks. They answered 2 questions to you and then they hung up. There was a group calling in to the president of JCP&L, and one question would be asked to him, and then everybody would get cut off. I mean, they've improved a lot. I mean, we have a lot more to improve. The infrastructure in town isn't good. We got offered solar panels, and we couldn't put them up at town hall because your infrastructure was bad. We had to improve that. That has to get better. And that's about it. But I mean, your time for getting people back online, yes, it has improved 100% from what it was. But the other stuff, the infrastructure and all that, that has to get better. That's it.
Thank you very much, Committeeman. And I want to thank the members of the public who have been on hold. Thank you also for the members of the public who have been honest. And if your questions was answered, they said so. So that cut down on the list. Again, this is only going to be for right now in this moment, JCP&L questions only, as I said at the top. So I want to get to those questions. First, I have Barry Klein. Pooh, if you can activate Barry Klein. Mr. Klein, if you could just say your name and address for the record, and then you have just a moment to ask your question, please.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Sure. Barry Klein, 291 Northview Terrace. First, I think you did a good job after the storm. We appreciate the communication, the line workers' hard work, and very dangerous conditions. That said, Councilman Kaiser's comments were great, and I totally agree. In addition to Councilman Huber, I've said this at meetings previously, and you should get together with other towns and voice your concerns to the state government and regulators. Hurricane Sandy was roughly 8 years ago, and we've lost power for about a week on 3 separate occasions. In addition, portions of this town have outages of several hours randomly in the middle of the day every month or so. The impacts are especially impactful considering everyone learning and working at home. As Councilman Kaiser mentioned, it's not about telling us when we'll have our power back on. We don't want it to go out to begin with. You need to fix the system. It's outdated. It's unreasonable to say that we should expect to live without power for a week every 3 years. If it's the trees, fix the problem. A tropical storm in the middle of the summer is not an unexpected event. If your lines can't handle them, build new lines. If trees put the lines at risk, there are 3 options: trim them, remove them, or underground the wires. In the past, I've heard that cost is an issue, so let's talk about that. You've collected $9 billion from New Jersey customers over the last 5 years, and revenues were actually down from 2015 to 2019. That's great, but wouldn't it have been a better use of the bill headroom, whether from cost efficiencies, lower commodity prices, lower power prices, lower taxes, to be put towards infrastructure investment? I guess all of this is more comments than questions, but I guess the question is, do we need to plan for another week-long outage in the coming years? And if so, why should we feel anything but powerless and hopeless? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Klein. I don't think I was on mute, so I'm sorry if I was making noise in the background. I was actually looking for some information to address your issue. But in terms of the investments that we're making, as I mentioned before, we go before the Board of Public Utilities to determine what investments we should spend the ratepayers' money on and how much. So it really is a collaborative process. It's not that we dictate it. The BPU has determined that undergrounding is not in fact, it is cost prohibitive. There are BPU orders that you can take a look at. There's one from July 2018. I have one in front of me right here. They've concluded that, there's so many variables that exist that a reliable cost estimate concerning the conversion to underground utilities lines is not, we're not able to get a clear estimate. However, the most comprehensive studies put the cost at a median average of over $3 million a mile, and that's the BPU order. Since these costs will be borne by ratepayers, the BPU believes that to the extent it would have any meaningful impact on reducing outages, it would be cost prohibitive at this time. So at this point, JCP&L is treated as an overhead company. The investments that the BPU wants to see us make and is approving is more vegetative management, and that's where we need our municipalities. Springfield has not been an issue for us in terms of refusals, but it is definitely an issue. And we're going to be doing more investments in that because this was a tree storm. The wires came down, the poles came down largely because of trees. The one incident that we talked about, there were trees down that took equipment down. So that's just one of the things, plus the other investments I mentioned. But I hope that answers your question. We are aware that the storms aren't going away, and that we're trying to make the best investments we can. But again, they have to be approved by the BPU, and the ratepayers have to approve them as well, because you have an advocate at every hearing saying, no, we don't want to invest in the infrastructure, but we don't want to have any more outages. So it has to be a balance, and the BPU is there to make sure that we're trying to strike the right balance. And usually what we have to do is negotiate what our investment's going to be.
Thank you.
I still feel like we're going to lose power every 3 years, and that's the
You are going
concern.
to lose power. We're never going to be able to prevent power outages completely. I would love to see that day. I don't know how that's going to happen, because in Springfield alone, and again, I'm one for stats. I just like hard, cold facts, so please excuse me. But your infrastructure alone in Springfield, you've got 13 circuits, 2,285
Okay,
poles.
how about the age? What's the average
Hold on,
age?
I'm answering your question.
Hold on.
58 miles of distribution lines. When the winds are roaring and the trees are coming down, that equipment is going to get damaged. You are going to have an outage, and we're going to do everything we can to prevent that or to restore you as quickly as possible. But to think that you're never going to have an outage, I cannot give you false hope.
A week-long outage every 3 years is what I'm saying. But what is the average age of the grid in our town?
Okay,
Is that a possible?
I'm gonna have to cut you off. Your 3 minutes are up. I apologize. If you want, please put your email, message me your email specifically, or message our host your email specifically, and we can. I don't think Carol will have a problem following up with you, as she's done with everyone else that we've encountered that wanted additional information. We have 2 more JCP&L related items in the queue. I'm going to have those be the last 2 JCP&L questions. And then we're going to continue with the public comments for agenda items, and then go through and continue the rest of our meeting. I do appreciate JCP&L taking the time, both Carol and Jackie, to be here. We're running a little bit over, but I do, again, since I do have 2 questions left in the queue, we're going to do these and then we're going to move on. So our next speaker is Scott Horowitz. Scott, Mr. Horowitz, if you could please just say your name and address for the record, and then you have 3 minutes for your question.
Hi, I'm Scott Horowitz, 74Q Drive. So 2 weeks ago on October 27th, it was a beautiful sunny day around 11 o'clock. Our town, for I understand, parts of Milburn, Short Hills, Summit, all these places went down. We're all working from home. I'm in the middle of an important meeting with my boss, and I have to say, oh, my power went out, I'm sorry. But what I understand, and I could be wrong, is there was some mistake made on your end that caused this. So I'd like to know what the cause was, what the rectification was, because there was no weather effort, and our entire town was down in multiple towns. So if you could please give us a post-op, I guess is the term, on what happened there, so we all know and how it's not going to happen again.
I think Carol may be frozen. Carol, did you lose connection?
Yeah, I looked through the outages today. I don't have the October 27th outage here. It's hard for me to keep track of every particular date. I cover a large territory, but you're saying that was October 27th, or was it October 29th?
Let me double check. I'm looking at my text messages when I sent my friends, do you guys have power? And everyone in town said no.
Tell me the date.
It was Tuesday, October 27th, around 11 a.m. We lost power. Whole town is out. How about you? Chris is Mayor Kaplan.
And just, I want to just say, Carol, with Mr. Horowitz, I'm not trying to pile on, but I do want to confirm that, again, we had virtual learning. I was working, my wife was working from home. It was clearly an issue. There was something going on, not only in the major parts of Springfield,
right,
but Milburn. There was some sort of issue, and I do understand that it was problematic for all those reasons. I don't want to, obviously put words in Mr. Horowitz's mouth.
Oh, okay, no, I see it now. It's I have to dig up my data.
Sure.
Let me just take a quick look.
Over 47.
This affected Springfield, Summit, and Mountainside. This was a transmission issue that came down, and then the crews were out and addressed it. So I don't have more information than that. I was in contact with your mayor to report to him. I can follow up with the mayor on that.
Yeah, and again, if you want to put your email in the chat to either myself directly or our host, his name is Apu, we can certainly follow up with you. No
Yeah.
problem.
I do have that in my data. I see it was 150, it says 154 minutes. It was a circuit lockout, and I have the information. They had to open the breaker to make repairs. So yeah, there were thousands of people affected that day, and I remember being in communication with you about that. So I'll follow up with you, Mayor.
Thank you. And the last person on, as far as JCP&L, is Mr. Lieberman. Mr. Lieberman, can you please state your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Sure. Hi. Thank you, Mayor. Paul Lieberman, 14 Treetop Drive in Springfield, New Jersey. Carol and Jackie, this really has nothing to do with the storm. I live in the Baltusrol Top neighborhood of Springfield. About 300 houses are up here. And we submitted a letter to JCP&L back in July. And unfortunately, we got front-run by the storm because this is, our neighborhood is it's been around for about 60 years. And you take the outages, the frequency of outages in the rest of Springfield, Mayor, you can multiply that by 20, and that's what we go through. All right. And these can be 1 minute long outages. They can be hour-long outages, multiple hour-long outages. So we wrote this letter, submitted it back on July 17th to JCP&L. And I couldn't in the Q&A submit the entire question, but I submitted the petition associated with the letter, and we had 47 residents from the neighborhood sign this petition. And we submitted this to JCP&L, the letter, and I got an automated response back in the summer, back in July, addressing causes of outages, nothing to do with solutions. And now that I'm in touch with the two of you, I'm wondering if you can help us with submitting this, because I've spoken to many of your workers. Every time your workers come around our neighborhood, I speak to them. I know there's one source of power. It's amazing to think that the most tree-lined neighborhood in Springfield, that's sort of, you've only got a couple of ways into the neighborhood, has one source of power. And given that Carol, you've mentioned this recurringly, that trees are the major concern. You would think in an era in a neighborhood that has a lot of trees, you would have maybe multiple sources of power into the neighborhood. We don't. So as potential solutions, we were thinking, add another source of power, maybe hardy tree wires, underground wiring was mentioned. There are a lot of different potential solutions. We'd love to hear your thoughts. We'd love to help you champion our letter to your firm, and would love to hear from you.
Mr. Lieberman, so you said you lived on Treetop?
Yep.
Okay, so that is where we're doing the work. Have you seen the new poles are being set by Verizon, and we're going to be doing the tie point that I talked about earlier in the meeting between the Waverly and Fathom Road. That's a project so that we're going to be able to feed you from a different direction. There was concern. I was there taking pictures actually, because I go out, I do the site visits to understand what we're doing. And there was concerns because there are a lot of trees. It isn't, beautiful trees. So we went back to design to consider all the trees that would have to be removed for this project. And what we're trying to do is do flow molding, it's called, or direct boring, so that we can create this tie point without having to remove all your trees. So, I'm really familiar with this project, and the concerns that you're raising should be addressed largely by this tie point. So I hope that gives you some comfort, but know that you're going to see some work in your neighborhood. It's on Treetop and what's the other one? Hillside? Is that by you? Treetop?
No, Hillside is the other end of town.
No, what's the other one that's, there's another one, right? What's the other cross street by you?
Mountain View?
Well, in any event, treetop, we're going to be doing work on Skylark. I'm sorry, Skylark, are you?
Right.
Skylark, it's Skylark. So that's happening. So I hope that that gives you some comfort.
Well, thank you, and thank you very much.
ETA on this project.
Sorry, I'm sorry. That's the 3 minutes are up, and I apologize. If you have additional questions, please feel free to put your email address in the chat, and we can certainly pass that along to Carol for additional. And again, that could also be an offline conversation. And I do need to apologize to both Carol and Jackie. I missed one other person who has been on since the beginning, and I misunderstood his comments in the chat. So this will absolutely be the last one.
That's
David,
fine, Mayor. No need to apologize.
and thank you. I appreciate you working with me. This is David Schrader. David, please just identify yourself, name and address, and you have 3 minutes as well.
Thank you, Mayor Capides. This is David Schrader. I live at 17 Treetop Drive. I live right across the street from Paul Lieberman, who just spoke. And since both Barry Klein and Paul have addressed a number of the items that I wanted to address, I actually wanted to pivot slightly to build off of something that Committeeman Kaiser had pontificated about with regards to climate change. And building on that with Carol, your comments about what you're calling vegetative management. And the two of them are not reconcilable. Climate change and care for the environment means planting more trees. I'm personally a 20-year veteran of corporate communications, so I've built Q&As. So I'm hoping that you have, or hoping that I have a question for your answer, Carol, and I've built decks like the one that you've built. And I also work on behalf of corporations that are involved with planting 100 million trees over the next 5 years, and I'm building those programs out. So here's the point of my question. One, I hope that we can all agree that telephone poles and electrical wires above ground are an absolute outrage and an archaic throwback to the Morse code and the telegraph. That's the first thing. The second is that my water has never failed during any of the three major outages, the ice storm of 2012, Sandy in 2013, and then the most recent storm that knocked the power out again for 10 days and it's cost me $12,000 for a generator. So let's talk about the trees for a second. Our town, and this is really addressed to our township committee, take a look around, guys. Look at the trees by these wires and what this company is doing to the beauty of our town. They are hacking at these trees in the name of vegetative management, and they have turned our town into a Tim Burton film. The trees, you'll see them on a nice cloudy day over the next few days without the leaves on them, look like skeletons. There is no sense of aesthetics or bringing in arborists that actually want the town to look beautiful. So I get it, Carol. I get the messaging that putting the electric wires underground, like the water and gas that never fail, is just too expensive. But had you guys done that 50 years ago, you would have spent a lot less money over that same 50-year period. So why don't you start now with mile one? And in 50 years, you won't have these conversations anymore. And in the meantime, our town can plant beautiful trees along all of our streets, flowering trees, tall trees, whatever trees we want, so that our town and our neighborhood will look beautiful, right? It's enough with what you're doing to our vegetation in the name of vegetative management. And I'm calling upon the Township Committee. Thank you, Mayor. I'll finish in a moment. I'm calling on the Township Committee to solve this part of the problem.
Carol respond, and then we can move on, and I can certainly add my comments to it. But thank you,
Mayor.
So I do want to say that we have an awesome team of foresters. They are certified arborists and they follow the best practices. We love trees, and we do love that you want to plant trees. We think Springfield's a beautiful town. That's why we were sensitive to it on treetop, but some trees that grow over our wires are just not compatible. So it's not in the name of cutting down trees, it's about reliability, and there's a balance. There are plenty of trees that can be planted under wires that won't grow over them. We recommend them. We have it on our website. We have trees that we recommend. There is a way to achieve both. With regard to your desire for undergrounding, as I said, the BPU views us as an overhead company. At this time, it's not something that we are doing. The BPU also, the studies that they have looked at, there are also, we do have neighborhoods that are underground, and new neighborhoods are put underground if there's 3 or more homes. Also, some towns will require developers to underground, and the costs are passed off to the developers. So it can be done, and it is done. But I will tell you that when there are underground faults, those are the longest outages of all. They're hard to detect. The wires underground are also vulnerable to erosion. So it's not without any problems. You're not going to have 100% reliability with underground. It is an alternative in some situations, and it can and is done. And it does provide some benefits. I live in an underground neighborhood, but it's fed overhead. So I'm still getting outages when those overhead lines are affected. And if we have an underground cable fault, and that has happened in my own neighborhood. So I just wanted to mention those other pieces of the equation, but I'm not discounting what you're saying. It can be desirable. And water, yes, you aren't going to lose power. You're not going to lose your water when we have a storm unless there's a underground fault. And we've had those in my own town, and those are a nightmare. So I do applaud New Jersey American Water because they're trying to replace all the infrastructure so that doesn't happen. So again, I hope that answered your question, but thanks for the thoughtful comments.
And thank you for your comments, Carol. I'm just going to say from a township perspective, and I'm not the ultimate authority on this, and maybe Mr. Betcher can help me out. But, obviously, as we said before, the underground cabling is just a tremendous, has a price tag to it. And as far as our trees go, I know it perhaps might look unsightly, but we just can't start cutting down, perfectly healthy trees. That's not just a practice that I think any of us want to get into. And I know at sometimes, that there might be some points where we have to trim, whether by us or utilities. And I don't know if Mr. Betcher is available, or I don't know if he stepped away, but Mr. Betcher, are you there? Can you just comment on the process and procedure of tree trimming, or any type of trimming that needs to be done by either, a utility company that's not perhaps JCP&L, or any trimming that you need to do that we need to be doing as a municipality?
Yes, good evening. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So first of all, I just want to speak to Carol's comments on the ash trees. And they are a problem, and we are addressing the ash trees slowly. We started years ago, and they are all going to be removed due to the emerald ash borer. As far as trimming, there's not a lot of aesthetics, I believe, that can go into clearing around the primary wire and giving them the clearance they need to minimize outages. So you can't have it both ways. They do have certified CTEs on board that review these trimming procedures, and I believe they do the best they can. From a DPW standpoint, unlike years ago, there was no thought put into tree planting. They just put a tree in the ground wherever. Over the last couple of years, we started looking at the locations and putting a species on the side of the wires. We put a low canopy species, and then on the side where there are no wires, that's where we put our high canopy. So we've been taking a proactive approach to planting the best that we can. But again, removing the trees is not an option. And I agree with Carol, where you're never going to be able to absolutely minimize or go without some type of power outage. So, but we have been taking a proactive approach to this, and that's about all from DPW standpoint.
And I appreciate it, Mr. Betcher. Thank you very much for your comments. To Carol and Jackie, thank you so much. I know you said you had 45 minutes for us, and I'm sorry if we took you away from anything else that you had planned tonight, especially if you had plans with the family. We really do appreciate you taking the time. This was an uncomfortable situation for all of us here as town representatives. And I'm sure at more points than not, made an uncomfortable situation for yourselves, even though that is your job and it is your responsibility. All of us up here that serve on the township committee and many of our employees, we're residents too. And, obviously all of our township committee members are residents and a lot of our employees are residents. We call and we complain because we care and we have a responsibility to our residents and we certainly appreciate the good working relationship, the good communication that we have. And sometimes that communication is always pleasant. But in those times of not being pleasant, we both know what the goal is, and we need to do our best in our auspices to make sure that we serve the communities that we are responsible for the best way we can, and we appreciate the relationship. And I just want to thank you very much, and please feel free to excuse yourselves whenever you see fit. And I thank you very, very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Mayor. And we enjoyed working very much together with you and John and your staff and Robert and everyone and Scott. And you're very good advocates for your town. You're doing exactly what you should be doing. And we're here to try to make things the best they can be. So thanks to Jackie too for being my backup always.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
He does a great job. Thank you.
Where to find me.
Thank
Thanks,
you
everyone.
very much.
Thank you.
We all take a breath. All right. So actually, technically, I still need to open the public comment for agenda items only. So anyone from the public wishing to comment on agenda items only, however, not JCP&L, because we spent the better part of an hour on it. Please use the Q&A function of your Zoom to make us aware. Seeing none, I am going to close the public comment portion of our meeting on agenda items, and I'm going to move on to administrator's report. Good evening, Mr. Basicolo.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Just a few quick items. I just want to let everybody know that we did manage to mill and pave 18 streets in town this year with the help of about $427,000 of grant money. We also did receive a community development grant for $105,000 that we're going to use to renovate Country Club Lane and Nelson Place next year. That'll be the spring of 21. Leaf collection has begun, and that will continue. I don't have an end date on that. I know it's on the website. If Robbie, if you want to jump in there with an end date, that would be great. If not, I want to move on to redevelopment because that has taken probably in the last 2 weeks, we have done probably almost nothing but. I think everybody's aware we had a car accident at the Golem site that actually ended up in between the old foundation on Morris Avenue and the new foundation inside the development. The car actually ended up sideways, sliding down all the way to the bottom. On Friday, it was pulled out, which was actually pretty amazing to watch. They came with a heavy-duty wrecker and actually just picked the car straight up, put it on the street. Within 15 minutes, it was out. Tremendous job. And as I said to Chief Cook, he was there. I said, a little buffing, that car will still be good. It was totaled. It was pretty bad.
You're having a tough crowd, John. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know. The next episode that we struggled with is, I think everybody's aware of, we had a pole that was on Caldwell that actually was in the sidewalk. What happened was it actually dropped through the sidewalk and through the side of the pit that they had dug out for the development. The street light that's probably 25 feet in the air actually was about a foot off the ground. So the entire pole slid through the excavation. And we've been working on that for well over a week. That finally actually wrapped up, I believe, this morning sometime. Yeah. And that's now completed. Now, that being said, I will give you a briefing on where we are on the development going forward. The footing on Caldwell and on Center Street, they're working on right now as we speak. That should be poured this week, in the next day or so. Once that is done, they're going to go back and they're going to start working on putting up the forms on the Caldwell side, because we want to get that shored up as soon as possible. Once that is poured, and I think everybody might be aware, they put shoring in. What they do is they drive plates in the ground in between the sidewalk and the excavation pit that they dug. They're actually going to leave those in as a backup. So that'll give us a little extra strength there also. But they want to get those walls done on Caldwell, and we're looking at about 2 weeks to get that foundation done on that side. We've also asked them in today's meeting, could they fill in between Morris Avenue, between the old foundation and the new foundation? Mr. Disco brought up to me is that cement takes 28 days to cure. You really don't want to pile all of that dirt against it until that cement is totally cured, because you could end up damaging it. So what we're going to do is we're going to get steel will be arriving in the not too distant future. They'd like to get some steel up on top of there, and then they'll fill in Morris Avenue side. They may try to put in maybe 8 or 10 feet in there, and then we'll wait a little while and fill up the rest. We had JCP&L out today for a meeting to now route the electricity to the development when it's finished. The latest game plan is that they're going to put an additional pole up over by Town Hall. Instead of coming from Morris Avenue and coming down Caldwell, they're actually going to come up, go the opposite way. That has to be finalized, but that right now is the game plan. So we're back on track. We're moving along on that. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we don't have a small plane or anything land in the excavation pit. If you saw the development across the street on Church Mall, most of the stone is now up. The second floor and the third floor are all plywood in. It's all covered now. The roof trusses are up and the roof is done. Charlie's making very good progress over there. Nothing further on Saks yet because the 45-day period is not up yet. That'll be sometime probably a little bit before Thanksgiving. The game plan is that they will demo the building, fence it in, and start the Saks project. Other than that, that's really been our last couple of weeks, to be honest with you. If there are any questions.
Well, John, my 8-year-old is doing a project in class where they have to provide something for the community, and she wants to put a store in Larkin's project. So he's got to get that up so she can open her stores. She told me today while we were walking home from school.
He actually has room there, Erica. So bring it on.
And just
she's gonna sell fidget. She's gonna sell fidget toys. She said out of that building over there that's going up. I like that one. I said, okay, whatever.
Perfect.
And just to give you a timeline, I don't know when they finished, but I dropped off my son at school this morning at Caldwell, and it was completely clear. I was there by 8 o'clock, and it was like it never happened. So it was,
it was clear at 5 this morning. I went to get coffee. It was clear at 5 o'clock this morning when I went to Wawa. So
I was going to say somewhere around 4:30 they actually finished up.
4:30 I left. 4:30 I drove up the street. Couldn't see with the fog, but I drove up the street. It was all clear.
Yeah, that turned out to be way more, I think, than anybody anticipated. But hopefully it's behind us and we're back on schedule again with them.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Any questions? Any additional questions for Mr. Basicolo? Seeing none, I'm going to move on with my sincere thanks. We're going to go to Mr. Scalera to give us an update about the bid. Good evening, sir. Thanks for hanging with us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. First of all, I want to congratulate you again for the re-election. You've been a wonderful charm to work with for 2020. I think, again, our partnership working with you guys in the Township Committee will really shine in 2021. So again, I want to thank you again. And just go back to when like a flood happens or there's electricity down. I've been on the meetings, and I want to thank Scott Seidel, Chief Palumbo, and Chief Cook. To sit down with them and see what they do behind the scenes is incredible. So they have the back of Springfield. And again, I just want to thank you guys again. So just a little update, I'll be quick. We had a new board member approved, and it's Mark Montanaro from Autoland. He's been officially approved by the board. We had an open slot. So again, great addition to the group. And again, just to make us stronger in regards to whether redevelopment or marketing in Springfield. I've been reaching out to all the new businesses coming in town. We have a ribbon cutting event coming up at Crab du Jour this Friday at 11:30. So if you guys can attend, there will be samples of food there. Really great. Again, they did a great job on the inside. And again, they're really looking forward to being a voice in Springfield and having great food in Springfield. We went to Halo Roasters last week. That was tremendous. It took us 45 minutes to do the ribbon cutting event. They were so busy, which was great to see on that. Mayor, you can attest to that, and so can you, Rich. But they were really wonderful, and I think they're still busting down the doors. So again, what we do, we help promote them. There's another auto detail place coming in Echo Plaza. It's Piotrs. They're in Summit. So I talked to the owner of that already. They're looking possibly after December 1st to do a grand opening, but they're really excited to have their auto detailing place in Echo Plaza. So again, what we do, we try to reach out to all the new businesses coming in, show them how the bid supports them. I'm encouraging everybody to go to Springfield Bid New Jersey on the Facebook page. Everything going on in Springfield is put on there, whether it be a new business coming in, a business trying to promote something they're going on, even events going on in Springfield. So, whether it be the high school, we're the one-stop place to really all the events going on in Springfield, we try to promote. And then lastly, on my end, we have the food crawl that's coming up now. There is a listing if you go to springfieldbidnewjersey.com. We have the food crawl that started right now. There's probably about 20 eateries on there. If you go to them, there's going to be discounts. This for the next, November 9th to the 19th. And then what you do, you get a sticker. It puts it on a paper and everything. And then what you do, it enters into a drawing where you can win gift cards, $250 gift cards at the end. So really trying, again, the whole idea is trying to promote the eateries in Springfield. And then lastly, we decided this year to really decorate Springfield more so on Mountain Avenue, TD Pizza, Choppies and everything. So we're earmarking $15,000 to $20,000, and we've been working with Robbie, he's been fantastic in regards to decorating those areas for when people drive into it. So again, in the next 2 weeks or so, you're going to see the area decorated off the chart. So, and then we'll pick some spots on Morris Avenue, obviously not around Gomes property because it's bad luck. But yeah, we're putting the extra 15 to 20 grand into it. So that's my report from the Springfield bid.
Well, I'm just going to tell you right now on the record, if something happens there again, I'm blaming you. But I'm kidding. But no, Mike, thank you for the kind words. If there's one thing that I'm particularly proud of among many things that I've done this year, we didn't know each other that well before I was appointed mayor, and unfortunately, it took a unfortunate event to bring us a little closer together. And I'm glad I got to know you and continue to know you. And I'm so glad I was able to bring you in as part of this meeting. Not only did you help the businesses, but I thought it would be so important to let the public know what's going on with the businesses, how they could support the local businesses, what options they have to support their local eateries and restaurants and establishments and services, and making you part of the meeting so you can share that information and the great work that you've done. I think that's very, very key to our residents.
Well, thank you so much. And again, it's we're in tune to what's going on with them. And we did the $1,500 grant for about 20 businesses. We're looking to do it again. And the smiles on their face when we delivered those checks to them was just incredible. But again, it's not about us, it's about them and promoting them and getting them back on their feet any way we possibly can.
Cool. I will see you Friday for the ribbon cutting.
11:30.
All right. Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions for Mike? Seeing none, let's pay some bills.
Favorite part of the night. I will make a motion to accept the payroll and invoices from the period of October 28th through November 10th, 2020 in the amount of $8,385,760.53.
I will second that.
Roll call, please.
Committeeman Kaiser,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Weber,
Yes.
Committeewoman Du Bois,
I'm still here.
Yes, sorry.
let's get Committeeman Huber,
Yes.
Mayor Capides.
Yes. It's
Yes.
very apropos for this meeting, especially since the long report by JCP&L. There are no ordinances, neither first nor second. So this is really, we can move right along now. We're going to do resolutions now. We like to adopt them by consent agenda. If you'd like me to pull any, please call it out as I read the number. 220, 273, 274, 275, 276, 277, 278, 279, 280, 281, 282, 283, 284, 285. Do I have a motion, please?
I will make a motion to adopt the following resolutions on consent agenda. Resolution 2020-273 through Resolution 2020-285.
Second?
I will second that.
Excellent. Roll call, please.
Committeeman Kaiser,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Weber,
Yes.
Committeewoman Du Bois,
Yes.
Committeeman Huber,
Yes.
Mayor Capides.
Yes. Discussion and action items.
Erica.
Mute. I know, I'm getting it. It's right here. I would like to discuss the approval of the New York Blood Center, New Jersey Blood Services Emergency Food Drive. Food drive or blood drive? Blood drive.
Blood.
Sorry.
Blood drive. Indoors at Chisholm Community Center on 3 dates, the first quarter of 2021, hold harmless and certificate of insurance attached.
I'll second that.
Excellent. There's no money in this, correct? So, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Extensions. Excellent.
Okay.
We have another one.
Like to discuss the approval of a donation of a Little Free Library purchased by Dobbs Auto Body on behalf of the Baltusrol Top Civic Association. Donation request letter attached. DPW has agreed to install the Little Free Library, which will be located at the Mount View Road Bicycle Park. Same product and installation as the one at Chisholm Community Center near the playground, which I know is a fan favorite, and I'm sure this one will be too. This is great news.
Yes. For
I'll
sure.
second that.
For sure. Roll call, please.
Committeewoman Du Bois,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Weber,
Yes.
Committeeman Huber,
Yes.
Committeeman Kaiser,
Yes. And a thank you.
Mayor Capides.
Absolutely, yes. We have one correspondence. It's a notice of public hearing. Mountainside Planning Board, Municipal Building regarding Block 8.02, Lot 1. I move that that be received and filed. And at this time, I'd like to open up the meeting to public comment on any governmental issue. If anyone from the public wishes to speak on any issue, please use the chat or Q&A function in the Zoom. You need to state your name and address. You will have 3 minutes to speak.
In Los Angeles, to have that much open space is pretty rare.
Seeing none, I would like to close the public comment portion of the meeting. Before I move for an adjournment, I think Committeeman Kaiser, did you have some things you wanted to share?
Hey, yeah, I did. I think I missed new business, but if we do that now, that's awesome. And yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I won't take long. Election Day was a week ago. Congratulations on your own, but also congratulations to President-elect Joe Biden and Vice President-elect Harris. This is a historic ticket. And they're going to be sworn in on January 20th, 2021. I think we're all looking forward to that new year and to that day, especially. there's a lot of issues that facing our nation, and they need to get to work immediately. From the COVID pandemic to the economic downturn to climate change to a whole host of issues that really need to be tackled head on, and not in a Republican or a Democratic mindset, but as a bipartisan manner, where we all need to work together and unite and heal our nation. The rhetoric on one side coming out is certainly scary. And some of the suggestions from peddling conspiracy theories that have no truth to them, and pushing, the rhetoric is getting dangerous, and it's certainly scaring a lot of people. And earlier today, it was a little too late to get it on this agenda, but I spoke to a councilwoman from Madison today for a long time on this issue, and it's something that she's kind of concerned about. And hey, trust me, Madison's from Morris County. That's no bastion of liberal or progressive, but she's concerned about the rhetoric coming from some leaders, and expected and wants, local leaders at all levels to speak out against it, and did a resolution kind of reaffirming, and it's unimaginable that we would have to do this, but a resolution reaffirming, everybody's access to a free and fair election, making sure that a peaceful transition of power is something that we believe in this country, and has happened every time since 1797. And lately, the rhetoric hasn't been such, when some leaders, whether they're doing it purposefully or not. So, there's a resolution. I forwarded it to Ms. Donnelly, and I'll forward it to you all, that would kind of reaffirm this and make sure. And I think it's something smart that we should do, because, when we need to speak out, we need to do it at all levels, and a rebuke of what's going on needs to happen. So I will certainly forward that for your thoughtful consideration to add to the next agenda. And this wasn't my idea. It comes from a councilwoman from Madison who's really trying to rally all the troops locally to get something, our voices heard.
Ms. Donnelly, put it on the agenda for next meeting, please. Absolutely.
Thank you, Alex. I appreciate you bringing this to light, and I look forward to reading it and discussing it further.
Anyone else? I have two quick things. Number one, for those who jumped on late or are still on, thank you for hanging with us. JCP&L was very informative tonight, and very, very well done. Whether you learned something or you're still angry about what went on, I don't think you can deny that tonight was a very informative presentation. However you feel about the service of JCP&L. It is a battle. It is a conversation that is still going to continue. We are still working with them. We are still going to advocate for the residents of Springfield. And I ask that anyone who may not have seen it, missed it, halfway through, please absolutely go back. This will be on Facebook and YouTube. Go back, rewatch it, and make sure that you can get as much information as you can out of it, because it was very well done. Again, regardless how you feel, the presentation, I think, was very well done and very informative. And I just want to say a quick thank you to my colleagues up here for the kind words. I look forward to the next 3 years. I'm so happy and honored to be in the position that I'm in. And we are a great team, and I value every one of your opinions. And as a team, we don't always agree, but I'm so proud to serve with all of you up here, and I look forward to next year and the 2 years after that. And thank you very much for all the residents for your support in me to continue to be able to be blessed to do this. And thank you to my family for your support.
Mayor, can we share the presentation? Can we put together, take the video of tonight's meeting and chop it up and get that presentation so we can reshare it for people?
I'm sure that if I talk to Apu or Joe Voorhees, I'm sure that between the two of them, we can have it edited down to just the presentation portion of the meeting, so that it could be shared through social media and emailed and such. Yeah, I don't think that'll be a problem, and I don't mean to put Apu on the spot, but if Apu, you could reach out to Joe and just circle back to either me or John to see the possibility of condensing the tonight's meeting to just the JCP&L portion, in addition to the entire meeting that we might be able to share with everybody. And while I'm on the topic of Apu and John for continuing not just for the township committee meetings, but for all of the township meetings that are going on, to coordinate them, to host them to the Zoom, and putting it on Facebook and YouTube and doing all of them live in the fashion that they're doing is just fantastic, and we appreciate the effort. Anyone else have any closing comments on the township committee? Seeing none, motion. What? Oh, wait. Oh, Rich, I thought you wanted to say something.
No.
No? Okay. Yes. On record, this is the longest meeting of the year. Yes, I agree. You sure, Rich? There's nothing else you wanted to say?
Oh, Chris Webber wants to second it.
All in favor? Do you have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Good night, everybody. Thank you for hanging with us tonight.
Good night, everyone.